In this video, I'm going to teach you how to read a pattern, how to figure out how much yardage you need for a project, and how to determine what size, and how to choose which view you want to do. So to start, I have 3 different brands here because obviously they look slightly different in how they arrange things, but still the information is generally the same. So this video will apply to pretty much all brands of patterns. The first thing to pay attention to are these numbers here. So we have here and there. When you are looking for a certain kind of pattern, sometimes it can be helpful to just Google those numbers with the brand. When you're at the fabric store, and this is what I use them for, usually I'm looking at a catalog. And then once I find like the type of pattern that I want to do, I go to the drawers and I pick out the number because they're all sorted by numbers. So you would look for the brand on the drawers and then pick out which number you are wanting, and that will just help you find it quicker. Next, here on the front, we also have this on the back as well, are different views for the pattern. Now this tells you all the different ways to sew this specific pattern and gives you an idea of what those styles can look like. And so obviously this is not an exact detail or measurement of what these patterns are like. So what we do in order to know the exact measurements of them is we look on the back. And once we've kind of figured out, oh, well, I kind of like, let's say this skirt, but I'm not sure how long it actually is. Obviously you can always alter length and things like that later, but maybe something like this dress, you're not sure how wide the shoulder sleeves are or something like that. So to get an idea, where we'll look, by the way, this is all in French, so don't worry about that side, unless you speak French. What we want to look at is right here, finished garment measurements, which all of these different patterns have that. Finished garment measurements. This is going to tell you, once you've cut out this project and sewn it together, how large this pattern is, and it tells you in inches. And all of these, what we're going to be talking about, the different columns, they all correspond with the different sizes. So right here, this all just drags down to the bottom. So if I'm looking at the pattern measurements and decide like, oh, well, let's say this length is a good length for me on skirt D, then I can look up and look at the large. Then I can check the waist measurements and everything, which I'll talk about in a second, to make sure it's right. So that's how you can help pick what size you need. Another way is looking right here at the top. This is another way to help you decide, because these finished garment measurements have design ease in them. So what we have to look at is up here, these are true body measurements. So if I measure my bust, this is where I want to look to determine my size as well. In fact, I probably want to look here first. If I measure my bust, and let's say I'm like 43 inches or something, and I come over here and I find 43, so it's between 42 and 44, so it's an extra large. And for this is a skirt, so obviously I don't need to know my bust measurement for a skirt. So then I would want to look at the waist and the hip and the back waist length, and I figure out where I am on here. Most likely my measurements aren't all going to fall under one size. They're probably going to be spread out. So at that point, I just have to figure out what's going to be the best way for me. Next, I just want to show you how to pick out your fabric and how much you need. You're going to figure out which size you are, and then you look down, and here are the different views. So once I figure out what view I want to do, let's say I want to do B. Come over here, find B, come over to my size, and let's pretend I'm a large. And there's 2 numbers here, so which one do I do? What does this mean? 45, 60 inches. This is the size of the bolt. So when you go to the fabric store, the bolts are different sizes. Sometimes they're smaller, sometimes they're bigger. They might be not exactly these measurements, but they're usually close to that. You figure out what the bolt size is. Let's say I find a bigger bolt, then I only need 1 yard. It's in yards. If it's a smaller bolt, then I need 1 3/4. That's going to be really important. It really is a bummer when you feel like you're looking at the big bolt and you think you only need a yard. Well, you got fabric on a small bolt, didn't know it, and then you only got a yard, but you were 3/4 yard short, and then you have to go back or go buy one big piece, and it can just cause a lot of problems. So make sure you're paying close attention to that. And then finally, just looking at suggested fabric. All of these patterns have a suggested fabric for them that they think will work best. So it's helpful to follow those. You don't necessarily have to, but you'll have greatest success doing that. And then finally we have notions. Notions are what you see here: zippers, hook and eyes, buttons, bias tape, elastic, things like that. That's what we look at the notions for, so make sure you're paying close attention. Sometimes certain views require certain notions, so another thing to pay close attention to. So that is how you read a pattern, and anytime you're using one, you're going to want to follow all those steps so that you have the greatest success with your project.